my dad was just 5 years old, his mother got very sick and died. Dad had no memories of her, so I never knew anything about my Yaya, not even what she looked like. There were no pictures, no mementos. It was kind of like she never existed. I did know my grandfather, though, my Papu, and I loved him very much. My dad told me Papu came to America from Greece in the early 1900s to make a better life. Papu's life was hard and full of tragedy, Dad said, and by the time I was born in 1961, Papu was an old man living by himself in a South Bronx tenement. When I was a little girl, I loved Papu with all my heart. I looked forward to visiting him. He would always make my favorite chicken rice pilaf, and I can practically taste it now, that delicious warm rice with a dollop of cool strained yogurt on top. He'd bounce me on his knee while singing Greek songs and pat me on the top of my head while I ate. Kolo koritsi, he'd say, you're a good girl. Papu died when I was 12. After we got home from the funeral, my dad said he needed to tell me something about his mother. But first, I had to promise to never tell anyone. She wasn't sick, he said. The truth is, Papu killed her. Dad went on to say that his mother had a boyfriend, and when Papu found out, they had an argument. They were in the kitchen. He picked up a carving knife, and he stabbed her to death. I was frozen silent. I couldn't believe what my dad said about my beloved Papu. Liar! If Papu killed Yaya, why didn't he go to prison? Dad pulled me into his chest to hug me, but I kept my arms stiff at my sides. I know, he said. It's terrible, but it's the truth. He squeezed me tighter and buried his face in my shoulder, sobbing. I had never seen my dad cry before. I felt so angry at my Papu, but I also felt so sad for my dad. I lifted my arms and hugged him back. I'm sorry, Daddy. I promise I'll never tell anyone. And for most of my life, aside from a few 4 a.m. bet you can't top this drunken stupor stories, I kept the family secret. I buried it. I joined the rest of my family in acting like my grandmother never existed. Several years after Papu's funeral, my Aunt Sophie, Dad's sister, she went to Greece, and she came back with an 8x10 studio portrait of Yaya. It was the first time I ever got to see what my grandmother looked like. After he showed me the photo, Dad just shoved it in a drawer. I wondered why he didn't put it on the family photo wall. And then I realized it was still a secret. She was still a secret. Decades passed. One day, I'm Googling my last name, and I come across a New York Times article dated February 8, 1935, with the headline, Kills Wife, Tries Suicide. The article began, in a jealous rage, Peter Derecas stabbed his wife, Mary. Peter Derecas, that was my Papu. After reading this article, my family secret became my personal obsession. I researched and found copies of my grandmother's death certificate and some court documents. I learned that she had been stabbed 43 times in her face, hands, neck, body, arms, and back. She was 29 years old. My grandfather pled not guilty. He was convicted of second-degree manslaughter, and he was paroled after only 3.5 years. Can you believe that? 43 stabs and less than a handful of years in prison. I started to hate my once beloved grandfather, and at the same time, I was consumed with curiosity and an abundance of love for my grandmother, my Yaya. I felt her spirit reaching out to me. After 75 years of being anonymous, it was like she wanted to be recognized as part of the family. I decided I wanted to go to Greece and visit her grave. When I brought this up with my dad, he was not happy. She's not in Greece, he said. Go ask Aunt Sophie where my mother is buried. I went to Mount Olivet, a cemetery in Maspeth, Queens, to find what my aunt had said was an unmarked grave. The groundskeeper led me to a plot on the hillside in what was obviously the poorest section of the cemetery. He pointed to a headstone. "This can't be," I said. "My aunt said there is no headstone, and that's a man's name." The groundskeeper explained that the plots on the hillside held 6 bodies, that my grandmother was at the very bottom, and the name on the headstone belonged to the body just on top of hers, and then there were 4 additional unnamed bodies on top of that. "How could they just leave her here in an unmarked grave for 75 years, I said. The groundskeeper shrugged. I fell on my hands and knees. I wanted her exhumed to give her a proper burial, but I knew that after 75 years, there was nothing left to exhume. The cemetery administrator said that I could get a new headstone with Yaya's name on it, but that I also had to put that original man's name on it. Fine, I said, put everyone's name on it. I embarked on my plan to give my grandmother back her rightful place in our family, completely unprepared for the backlash from my relatives. Some were supportive, but most, both in Greece and America, were not. I was lambasted for airing our dirty laundry on my social media and accused of exploiting my family's secret for my own benefit. A cousin, some 24-year-old guy from Greece who I don't even know, messaged me. He said my Yaya was dishonorable, a whore, and that Papu was a good man, justified in his actions. You should forgive him and stop dishonoring the family name. Forgive him? What about forgiving her? She was 29 years old, murdered. Her children, just 5 and 6 years old, left without a mother. I think about how hard she must have fought, the terror she felt, being stabbed by her husband. My dad said his father never expressed any remorse. Papu said he slaughtered her, that my grandmother was a whore, that she got what she deserved. I don't believe the whole boyfriend thing, and my grandmother is not here to defend herself. But I don't care what she did. She didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that. I wanted my family to stop trashing her name. I was determined to be the ally my grandmother deserved, even though my dad was very upset with me. Stop trying to resurrect my mother, he said. It's not your place. This happened to me, not you. I disagreed. She was my grandmother. If she hadn't been killed so young, I probably would have known her and had a relationship with her. I told him Yaya deserved her rightful place in our family. Can we all just stop pretending she never existed? Can we stop trashing her? Can we forgive her? When it became clear that I was not going to back down, my dad gave in and supported my efforts. And on a beautiful sunny day, in May of 2010, supportive family members representing 4 generations of Yaya's descendants gathered for a long overdue memorial service around the new headstone. My Aunt Sophie, Dad's sister, 81 years old at the time, brought seashells from Florida and scattered them around the headstone, just like she might have done as that 6-year-old girl. Dad brought the portrait of his mother, now it was framed, and displayed it on an easel next to the headstone. My cousins brought flowers and read poems. My older son held the sheet music, while my younger son played Amazing Grace on his saxophone. Some people said they were too young to be there, just 11 and 12 years old at the time. But I thought it was important for my boys to know that what happened in our family was not okay. I felt Yaya's spirit all around us that day. While Father Nick circled the tombstone with incense chanting in Greek, I imagined her breaking free of the secret that kept her buried in an unmarked grave for all those years. Dad hugged me close. You're a good daughter, he said. Thank you for giving us the chance to say goodbye. Now we don't have to feel shame anymore. I turned my gaze to the headstone, but I didn't say goodbye. I knew my Yaya was with me, and that this was just the beginning of my relationship with my grandmother, a woman called Maria Anastasiou Derecas. Thank you.